Labour is urging the government to publish its exit strategy from the coronavirus lockdown this week. Labour's leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has told Dominic Raab that while he supports the lockdown extension, the public need to know what's coming next for the sake of morale and hope. And handily enough, as you can see, Sir Keir Starmer joins us now. Sir Keir, very good morning to you. Set out, if you would, in just a little bit more detail, exactly what it is that you are calling upon the government to provide you and colleagues with.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, we know that the government is going to say that lockdown has to stay in place for a bit longer. They're right about that. And I said when I took over as leader of the Labour Party that the Labour Party with the courage to say when the government is right and support it. And we will support that. Lockdown must continue. What I'm calling on the government to do is to set out now what the exit strategy is. So in other words, what will happen next? I'm not asking for dates. I do understand that that's unrealistic. And I said I wouldn't ask the impossible. But what we need to know is what's the strategy? What are the criteria? And I think there are two main reasons we need to know that. The first is to make sure we've got the trust of the public. We're asking a lot of the public. It is really difficult what they're going through, whether that's for health reasons, economic reasons, or many, many others. We need to maintain trust, and I believe that transparency is the best way to continue that trust and a sense of hope about what's going to happen next. The second reason is that whatever the strategy, the plans need to be in place sooner rather than later. I'll give you just one small example of that. I think it's likely that mass testing, and I mean mass testing, and tracing is likely to be part of any strategy. If we're to get mass testing in due course and at the right time, we need to start the work on that now because, as you'll have seen, the government struggled with testing so far. It promised 25,000 tests by the middle of April, where we're there now and they've only got 15,000. It's promised 100,000 by the end of April. So I hope they achieve that, but that's a big curve. But 100,000 is nothing like the number we'd need if we were to have this as part of the exit strategy. So for public trust and planning, now is the time to set that strategy out. And I can say to the government, if they do set it out, and we can test it and challenge it and look at it, but we think it's broadly right, we will then be able to support it. So there's an added advantage of taking this step now.
There will be people watching this who welcome any opposition politician asking questions which frankly, journalists have been asking the daily briefing for quite some time. There will be others who point out that you agree with the lockdown extension, in part, I presume, because that is the advice coming from the Chief Medical Officer and the Chief Science Officer. However, when the Chief Medical Officer and the Chief Science Officer tell you it is too early to be discussing the exit strategy from lockdown, you disagree.
Well, let me set out the basis for disagreement because I said when I took over as leader that we would be a constructive opposition with the courage to say we support the government where we do, but also with the courage to challenge where we think there are mistakes or things aren't happening quickly enough. And I said that the purpose of that challenge would not be to score points or just because we can, but to point out mistakes or things not happening quickly enough so they can be put right. And that's why we've focused heavily in recent weeks on protective equipment for the front line and on testing, not to score a point, but just to say you're not where you need to be, you need to ramp it up. But I do think that mistakes were made earlier in terms of the planning for lockdown and the speed of lockdown. Let's not repeat that. I don't want to dwell on the past. Let's not repeat that. Let's actually make the planning decisions for the future. Science is really important in this, but science in the end can't tell you what the political strategy is for coming out of lockdown, because that involves political decisions as well as scientific decisions.
I mean, part of Labour's request for this extra additional information appears to be about providing some reassurance to the general public, who in the main are following the rules, to give them an idea that there is some light at the end of the tunnel. What if there isn't a lot of light at the end of the tunnel? What if we cannot see that end of the tunnel just yet? Are we right to raise expectations of a relaxation or even an end to these lockdown conditions when, frankly, as yet, there is no empirical data to suggest that the government should be changing course?
Well, we do need to reassure the public because I think the final exit strategy can only come with a vaccine, because it's only at that point that we can probably say we can fully exit. But we all know that a vaccine, or it was said that a vaccine won't be available for 12 months or so. So the government has to answer the question, what happens in the 12 months or whatever that period is? And I think for the public to have trust in what's going on, they're going to need answers to those questions. I'm not asking for timelines. I do understand that. I accept there may have to be some conditionality in this. If X happens, then we would do the following, whatever that may be. People understand that. But what they want to know is what is the approach that you're going to take when the curve flattens, as we all desperately hope that it does, and the sooner the better, because people are putting up with a lot. I thank them. I mean, people are doing amazing things in the national interest. We want them to continue to do that, but I think we can only do that if we have their trust. And this is difficult for people, particularly those that are in overcrowded accommodation, those that are lonely with mental health issues, those that are in abusive relationships are particularly at risk. So we're asking a huge amount of the public, and I genuinely think that transparency about what happens next, and the public will understand if there are conditions, and the public will understand if we say you can't say precisely what date or what time, but also those plans need to go into place. And also, if we can get a consensus that this is the right strategy going forward, I think that will give trust to the public as well.
Sir Keir, can we turn our attention just briefly to the leaked report into the investigation of allegations of anti-Semitism within the party? I mean, first things first, I spoke to the Shadow Chancellor yesterday, and she knew nothing about this internal review of an internal review that you yourself have announced. So why is the party reviewing a review that it itself commissioned?
Well, there was a leaked internal review that was leaked yesterday or the day before. When I saw it, I was concerned about it, and therefore set up an investigation into how that came about and into the contents of this internal review, and how it came to be leaked. And that process will now run through. This is a report into things that apparently happened before I was leader of the Labour Party. We need an independent review. It needs to be speedy and professional. But what I said in my leadership campaign over 3 months is that the Labour Party needs to unite and focus on its historic purpose, which is being in government to change millions of lives for the better. So I want to end this factionalism. I want us to unite and focus on that objective.
Indeed. Sorry for interrupting. I know we have a problem with the delay on these lines, so thank you for bearing with me. With respect, it doesn't sound as if you have a huge amount of confidence in, again, the findings of an internal inquiry commissioned and set up by comrades of yours within the party, carried out by comrades of yours in the party. In fact, it rather suggests that you've had a look at the findings of this report and disagreed with them.
No, I haven't said that. What I've said is there needs to be an independent investigation into the report and the contents. I will wait until the end of that investigation before commenting further, because I don't want to get into this debate about jumping to conclusions one way or the other. It needs to be looked at. It caused me serious cause for concern in what I read. So I want this investigation. I want it done speedily and professionally. But more than anything, I want our party to pull together and focus on the real objective, which is our historic purpose, the reason the Labour Party was set up, which is to go into government and change millions of lives for the better.
Are you prepared to eject people from the party who are actively undermining your predecessor, Jeremy Corbyn?
I'm not going to preempt the outcome of this investigation. I've set it up. I want it to be speedy, and I'll obviously look at the result when we get it. But I'm not going to preempt that.
Sir Keir Starmer, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Hope you and yours stay very well.